haven't managed to do. So what's your game plan for managing Mr. Trump?
Every world leader is asking that exact question right now. Some have tried flattery. They flew to Mar-a-Lago with gifts and smiles and walked away with nothing but higher tariffs. Some have tried concessions. They offered trade adjustments, border controls, symbolic gestures. Trump took the concessions and came back for more. Some went completely silent, hoping the storm would pass. It didn't. But in a room full of some of the world's most powerful financial minds in Australia, Mark Carney did something none of them expected. He answered the question directly, calmly, without hesitation. And what he revealed wasn't just a personal approach. It was a masterclass in reading one of the most unpredictable leaders the world has ever seen. Tonight, Canada Insider breaks it down. Because this answer matters far beyond diplomacy. It matters for every negotiation Canada faces in the months ahead.
I think the first thing is one, respect, but not obsequiousness. Right? He's president for a reason. He's had success in other areas. He's eminently, elected twice. You would say elected 3 times. He does, but very successful politician.
Let's stop right there, because that word obsequiousness is doing enormous work in that sentence. Carney is not saying bow to Trump. He is not saying flatter him. He is not saying tell him what he wants to hear. He is saying something far more strategic. Acknowledge the reality of who Trump is. He was elected twice. He commands genuine political loyalty from tens of millions of Americans. He has succeeded where many said he would fail. Pretending otherwise doesn't weaken Trump. It weakens you. That is rule 1. Respect the office, respect the mandate, respect the political reality. But the moment you cross into obsequiousness, the moment you start performing for him instead of engaging with him, you have lost the room. And Carney has never lost the room.
You don't want to, I'm going to say something very obvious, but it's important. You don't want to say anything in public that you can't back up. You might choose your words. One chooses language for the audience, right? That's true in any circumstance. So you're careful in terms of the language that you use with him, but in a way that's consistent with what you really think.
This is rule 2, and it sounds obvious. But here is what most people miss. This rule is not about being careful with words. It is about consistency under pressure. Because Trump tests consistency. He watches whether what you say on camera matches what you defend in private. He watches whether your public position holds when he pushes back. And the moment he senses a gap between your public statement and your actual conviction, that is when he moves. Carney has never given him that gap. Every public statement Canada has made under Carney's leadership has been backed up with action. No retreat, no quiet walkbacks, no softening of language after a difficult phone call. What Carney says publicly is exactly what he defends privately. That consistency is not just integrity. That is leverage.
It's quite different in private. It's much more. He is more interested in your viewpoint on various things in private, and that creates an ability to work through things. But it's not easy, to be clear. It's not easy.
And here is where this gets explosive. Because what Carney just revealed contradicts almost everything the media assumes about dealing with Trump. The public Trump, the one on Truth Social, the one at rallies, the one announcing tariffs at midnight that Trump performs. He escalates, he dominates, he doesn't listen. But the private Trump? According to Carney, who has sat across the table from him, the private Trump is genuinely interested in what you actually think. He wants your real position. He wants directness. He wants engagement, not performance. That is the private Trump rule, and it changes everything about how you read Canada's strategy. While other leaders were crafting careful public statements designed to avoid provoking him, Carney was doing something else entirely. He was building a direct line, saying what he meant, holding his position, and creating, in Carney's own words, an ability to work through things. That is not weakness. That is not compromise. That is surgical diplomacy, and it is working. But here is what makes this even more important. Managing Trump is the short game. And Carney is not a short game player. Because while he was quietly mastering the art of the private conversation, he was simultaneously building something far more powerful. Something that makes those conversations less and less consequential over time. Something that doesn't just manage Trump's pressure, it makes that pressure structurally irrelevant. And when he revealed the numbers in Australia, the room went very quiet.
He said, to be free, you have to be feared. To be feared, you have to be strong. Do you agree with that? Do you think that in this world that countries like Canada and Australia need to beef up their defence expenditure, make their militaries more lethal?
Well, so that aspect, the way you ended the question, yes, is the short answer.
Yes. One word. No hesitation. No diplomatic softening. No, well, it depends or we need to study the situation further. Just yes. But here is what that yes actually means. Because Carney is not talking about strength the way Trump talks about strength. Trump talks about strength as domination, tariffs as weapons, threats as leverage, pressure as policy. Carney's definition of strength is something entirely different, and it is something that should make Washington deeply uncomfortable. Because the strength Carney is building cannot be threatened with tariffs. It cannot be reversed with a Truth Social post. It cannot be undone in a single phone call. It is structural, it is permanent, and it starts with a number that almost nobody in the financial press is talking about.
We're doing it, and just to put some numbers on it, we will double our defense expenditure starting from start of last year to the end of this decade. So literally double in dollar terms. We will, overall, we will get to, as per the NATO definition, 5% of GDP by 2035. I'll be clear that, and this is a relevant point for cooperation, there's a 1.5% of that 5%, percentage points of the 5%, is so-called dual use. So it can be an AI, cyber, other resilience-related dual use ports, things like that. And we need to do that. Look, we have a NATO commitment. We've made that commitment. We'll move towards it. We're not going to spend money on defense just to spend money on defense. The challenge is...
Let that land for a moment. Double, not increase, not adjust, not gradually scale. Double, in dollar terms. By the end of this decade, and then 5% of GDP by 2035, as per the NATO definition. To put that in context, most NATO members are still struggling to hit 2%. Canada is committing to 5%. That is not meeting an obligation. That is redefining what commitment looks like. But here's the part most people completely missed in that answer. And this is where Carney's thinking separates itself from every other leader in that room. 1.5 percentage points of that 5% is designated as dual use. AI, cyber, ports, resilience infrastructure. Not tanks, not fighter jets. Not the conventional military hardware that defined 20th century power. 21st century power. The kind that wins without firing a single shot. Think about what that means strategically. Trump's entire pressure model is built on economic dependency. If Canada depends on U.S. markets, tariffs hurt. If Canada depends on U.S. security guarantees, military threats work. If Canada depends on American technology infrastructure, digital leverage applies. Carney is systematically dismantling every single one of those dependencies. At the same time, under one budget commitment. That is not defense spending. That is independent spending. And this is why the announcement landed the way it did. Because the leaders in that room understood something the headlines missed entirely. This is Canada announcing it is building its own gravitational pull, its own strategic weight, its own seat at the table that nobody can take away, not through tariffs, not through threats, not through the kind of pressure campaigns Trump has made his political signature. While Trump calls tariffs the most beautiful word in the dictionary, Carney is making them the most irrelevant. While Washington debates percentage points, Ottawa is doubling its strategic independence. While the world watches Trump escalate, Canada is quietly building a world where that escalation lands on nothing. That is not reaction. That is architecture. Carney didn't just answer Macron's question about strength. He redefined what strength looks like for a mid-sized nation, navigating the most volatile geopolitical moment in a generation. Not louder, not more aggressive. Not more dependent on alliances that can shift overnight. Stronger, independently, permanently. And that is the 5% doctrine. Remember that phrase. Because in the years ahead, as Canada's strategic position continues to expand, you will hear it again and again. This is not the Canada that nervously watched Washington for signals. This is not the Canada that measured its moves against American reaction. This is a Canada that has decided clearly, finally, irreversibly, that its future will be built on its own terms. So let us bring both parts together. Because when you place the private Trump rule next to the 5% doctrine, something remarkable comes into focus. Something that explains exactly why Canada's position looks stronger today than it has in decades. So here is what just happened in a single press conference. Carney told the world exactly how he reads Trump. Then he told the world he is building a Canada that no longer needs to. That is not diplomacy. That is dominance. While other leaders are memorizing scripts for their next Trump meeting, Carney is making those meetings less and less consequential. While Washington debates tariff percentages, Ottawa is doubling its strategic independence. While Trump applies pressure, Carney builds alternatives. While Trump escalates rhetoric, Carney signs architecture. He didn't say Canada won't cave. He built a world where it doesn't have to. That is the difference between a leader who reacts and a leader who builds. And right now on the world stage, under maximum pressure, in front of the most volatile geopolitical moment in a generation, Mark Carney is building. That is not reaction. That is Canada. If you believe Canada should never negotiate from fear, if you believe strategic independence matters more than short-term relief, if you believe the world needs to see exactly what a mid-sized nation looks like when it refuses to be cornered, this is your channel. Canada Insider exists for one reason: to break down the strategy behind the speeches, the leverage behind the deals, the architecture behind the headlines. Because the most important moves Canada is making right now are not happening in press conferences. They are happening in private rooms, in trade missions, in defense budgets, and in decisions that will define this country's position for the next generation. We track every single one. Subscribe to Canada Insider. Turn on notifications, and stay ahead of every move that matters. And now I want to hear from you. Is Carney's two-part strategy, mastering the private conversation while building permanent independence, the most sophisticated response any leader has shown to Trump's pressure campaign so far? Or is the real test still ahead? Let me know in the comments below.